Okay. I don't even know what today is. All right, the September 13th Timnath Town Council work session comes to order at 3 o'clock. Mayor Mark Sukup. Mayor Pro Tem Breck Hansen.
Here.
Councilmember Lisa Lake.
Here.
Councilmember Robert Oxmacher.
Present.
Councilmember Luke Wagner.
Here.
Okay. Okay, Aaron. Well, thanks, Mark, and all the council for being here so early. We wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for getting through this. We hope to get through the discussion without you feeling rushed or having to cut this off prematurely. So we certainly appreciate you taking time out of all of your busy schedules. I would also echo, Mark, your comments. Lisa and her department, and really all the department heads have really worked together and put a lot of effort into what you have before you. The piece missing now is just your input. And so we're here to help present that to you and to seek your input at some of the more critical junctures. Before we dive in though, I was going to just do a quick outline of where we are today and what the timeline looks like going forward for us all. So here we are now with our budget, the work session, obviously. Next month, we will have a completed draft of the budget based on your feedback that we received today. That will be put out for the public, and we will probably replicate a process we used last year where we used an online format with a video to present some of the budget information and then a specific way that they could respond back to us. Actually, we gave them a couple of options that way. So that'll happen next month. That'll line us up for November for a first reading on the budget. Sorry, there's a fly that is buzzing right in my face. And then December will be final adoption for that budget. And so today our intent is to, with the work session, we feel like this is a less formal. We hope it can be a conversation with us as the staff presenting what we have and you feeling comfortable to ask questions. We'll definitely pause at times for you to have those questions. And then discussion. Specifically, we think as we roll into the CIP part, there will be some discussion there. We did allocate the most time for that, thinking it would be the area where you wanted to have conversation amongst yourselves the most. Just a couple of other quick points. We have presented a lot of information that are projections. We just want you to keep in mind what we'll be asking you to do is adopt a 2023 budget. Those numbers will become set when the vote happens in December. Our projections outside of that, 24 and the years beyond, are all of our best efforts, but potentially subject to change. We think 23 will be set. 24 is a pretty tight number, but as the years go on, our projections become a little looser. So that's sort of a generic comment because we do have multiple points where we've made projections into the future, whether it's revenues, expenditures, personnel, and other things. So just wanted to make that note too. So with that, I'm going to talk about a few key initiatives that we've talked about that will set us up I think, for today's discussion. So as you all know, the town is growing quickly, and so we want to be prepared for that. And so in the 23 budget, we do have a focus on some studies. We have budgeted for a transportation study. We're going to have an evaluation of our IT. We're actually trying to work with Mark Pfaffinger, who is the IT director for Larimer County, to help him lend some support and take a high-level look to make sure what we're doing is making sense. We also have budgeted for master plan related to Parks and Rec. And so as we continue to grow, we know we'll need those plans. We also know that our departments will have their needs change. So what we've tried to do with this budget is to drill down and really align our expenditures with the actual department needs to make sure we're budgeting for what is needed and to not spend for the sake of spending, we'll say. We do have the goal that council has identified actually for the last several years of getting to 24/7 police coverage. We do know that, or we anticipate that will happen in 2023. Also, as we experience that growth, it's going to bring other challenges. And so the budget includes a little bit of money for consulting through economic development because we anticipate needs will come from that. We will also continue and finalize a discussion that was started with you all about incentives. And so we do have that to bring to you, we hope, before the end of the year. We also, as we discuss the CIP, we'll have an opportunity to talk about what we feel are council goals, what we've heard as council goals, and also from our community, which would be an enhancement to our parks and trails, transportation improvements, and looking at broadband. And the other piece that we'll touch on today as we talk through we'll talk about events and how those events have grown, and as our community has grown, their attendance has grown. And so that's kind of how we'll end things. We'll be talking about events. The other piece, obviously, as we talk about personnel, we also want to touch on the council philosophy and direction we've been given in the last couple of years of looking at positions and finding those positions that would make sense to go from a contracted to an internal position. And so at a very high level, that's sort of our key initiatives and what we're going to try and get through with you today. So with that, I'm going to let Lisa talk to you about some of the assumptions and the backbone of this budget.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I'll try not to read to you, but I do want to highlight some of the assumptions that were made in the budget. I feel like we've continued our approach that is rather conservative on the revenue side, so we're not over projecting revenue. You will notice that property tax is estimated to remain flat from 2022 to 2023, and that's just a change in the assessment rate. Our actual values did go up because the assessment rate changed for residential and commercial properties, that's going to remain flat. That House bill is set to expire in 2 years, so we'll see what happens after that. Sales tax, we projected a very conservative estimate of 1 new retail store in 2023, and then beyond that, it was just a 10% growth.
Lisa, can
yeah.
I, Doug, is the retail outlet you assume was a Florida Core?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
you sort of know what they are, right?
Yeah, I took their average and I estimated just 50% of that for 2023 until we start to see what it actually is.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to follow on with that, it's my understanding we have 2 or 3 other establishments that are in approval process right now.
Yes, and
Okay.
those are not accounted for.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The 2022 estimate does include the sale of 1 residential property. If that happens this year, then it's accounted for in our estimate. If not, then I may make a change to 2023 before budget adoption, just based on the timing. Impact fees are based on the current fees that we have in place. And as you all know, we're in the process of a townwide study. So if those impact fees or any other fees change as a result of that study, I'll incorporate those prior to budget adoption. On the expense side, we've included all of the salaries that are in your 5-year personnel schedule that we'll discuss later. It does include decrease in contracted costs as we ramp up in-house staff. I've put in all of the expenses that are in your 5-year CIP that we'll review later. That total is an $81 million investment over the 5 years in transportation, parks and rec, and buildings. It does include costs for the new PD building. And as Aaron mentioned, what we did was we tried to align expenses within respective departments. So there was some shuffling between public works, maintenance expenses that shifted over to parks and rec. The new PD building costs are in the PD budget, not under general government. And then the Goodman facility costs are now under public works. So there was some shuffling of some of those costs that you will see. And then in addition to funding those initiatives that Aaron talked about earlier. Now, based on all of those assumptions, what's the bottom line? You can see that in section 4 of your packet, which includes the 5-year projections. On the last page, line 45, that's our total unrestricted fund balance. And you can see all the way out to year 2027, we do have a positive unrestricted fund balance, and it's at 24%. Our policy says that we can dip below 25% as long as it's for a capital project, an economic downturn, or anything like that. So we're well within our working reserve policy. And with that, I can open it up for questions. We weren't scheduled to start the personnel till 3:30, so I can answer anything outside of those if you have questions.
So I've got one question on your assumptions. It says a potential program to provide assistance to property owners to replace ash and cottonwood trees. So it seems strange to me that we would be cutting down that private owners' trees that they planted. It would seem to be the responsibility of the homeowner, not the town, to get rid of, if they want, their ash and cottonwood trees. And I got an ash tree. We spray it every year, and I don't know as I'd appreciate me paying for somebody else's tree getting cut down while I'm trying to maintain mine. I think that makes sense for public spaces. I don't think it makes sense for private spaces.
So we certainly can pull it back if that's the council direction. What we did was set aside $35,000. These would be for trees that are in the right of way. And so it's a gray area in a sense that right of way is public land, but you can also say right of way trees are the responsibility of an adjacent property owner. And so we thought it would be a way to incentivize the removal of those trees. From the staff's perspective, I don't think any of us have very strong feelings about this. So if council says, I understand that's the right of way, but it's still the property owner's responsibility to remove these trees, I don't think any of us will have heartburn to pull back. It's a $35,000 allocation is what it is.
And maybe I don't understand the planting of it as much. So ash trees just are going to die. You got the borer and they're going to die. So I can't imagine somebody wanting to have a dead tree in front and to cut it out before it's dead. Seems a little premature. Now, cottonwood, are you talking about male or female cottonwood trees?
All right, I'm going to go to Matt.
I heard you guys talking about trees, so I figured I'd come out here. So we're really, as Aaron mentioned, we're talking about the right-of-way trees between the sidewalk and the curb.
Yeah.
In a specific neighborhood or two. South, Timnath Ranch. Those trees were planted with the development, and they were planted as part of that right-of-way, which is the town's ownership. The adjacent property owner is responsible to maintain those. However, those two trees would not have been allowed to be planted today. So you wouldn't be able to plant an ash tree in Timnath or a cottonwood tree in Timnath today. The cottonwood trees, female or male, regardless, the seed bearing, the female ones would not be allowed, but the male ones would. However, the problem is that they're too big for that little tiny 5-foot wide strip between the sidewalk and the curb. They're pushing the curbs, they're pushing the sidewalks. They're causing big problems down there. They're getting too big for the space. So people have been requesting to have them removed, and there's a pretty big expense to put them back. The town wants them to go back. The Metro District wants them to go back. The property owner wants them to go back. Our thought with this 35,000 would be to help people bump, maybe not pay for the entire tree, but say support them in planting a tree back. So they cut it down, they pay for the cost of cutting it down. We contribute maybe $150. We haven't set the program yet in place. We wanted to put the money in that space so that we could support them maybe by $150, $200 towards a new tree that gets planted back in that space when the ash tree dies inevitably, or when the cottonwood becomes too big and it becomes a problem for the curb and the sidewalk and the street. That's the arrangement we're working at.
I'm okay with us doing some kind of match. They do 2 to 1 or something like that. Yeah. Let me make sure I understand. Those trees, the homeowner didn't plant.
The homeowner did not plant
Okay.
those.
Yeah, so I'm okay if we did some kind of match program or something like that. I mean, I don't know what everyone else thinks.
So what about the ones, for example, I'm pretty sure that in the right of way in front of my house, it's an ash. We were responsible for putting in landscaping. I agree when Mark first said, I think it sets a precedent for the town doing things in a way that the homeowner should be taking responsibility. I know we had homes in my neighborhood a couple of years ago where trees were really low, and either the town or the Metro District, I don't remember which at the time, came in to cut some of them to not block stop signs. But that should have been the homeowner who did that.
Correct.
And so I'm hesitant to do it, because if it's only in a right of way where it was planted by someone else, like why not me? Which I really don't think the town should be paying for my tree anyway. And all of our documents state that the homeowner is responsible for upkeep and maintenance of that right of way. So I'm just hesitant, because what's to say one homeowner who doesn't get something out of this deal but wants something else down the road in that right of way can't come around and just, for whatever reason. And I'm always hesitant to cut down trees that don't need to be cut down. And most of the time, the trees that we're required to plant in that right of way are too big to be put right next to a sidewalk anyway. So that's kind of my thought.
Other comments? I think we're going to direct you to take that line off, and that we will not do that program.
Yep, not a problem. We'll remove that.
Thank you.
Mark, can I ask some? Go ahead.
Oh, no, go.
Aaron, I was going to ask some general questions. Like, is the goal of the budget to then come under the budget? Like, and when I say that is, I look at a couple line items and I think in our operational budget, and I see where our 2022 projections come in, and then where we're estimating 2023. And some of those I asked Lisa about. Thank you, Lisa. And like, I look at some of those and I think, why would we increase them? Or if we're not spending as much this year, why increase it for next year? And I just ask, like, is the goal always to come under then? Like, because like meetings, committees, and recognition, where we've got 22,000 this year, and then we're putting 41,000 for next year. Like, that's a lot to anticipate just we're 22,000 now and we're just going to double it for next year. Like, help me understand where some of these ones, like I get for consulting, like some of those things we're planning, but why have some of these line items in the budget where we're just essentially going back to the 2022 budget?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So as a general, without drilling down on any specific line, what we're trying to do is strike a balance. And so we've met with each of the departments to try and talk about these lines specifically. And so as a general philosophy, what we have done is we would rather have the budget be there and we come in a little under budget versus the other way around. And so some of those are set, I'm going to call it conservatively, meaning that the money will be there and those lines may not be fully expended. That's been the general philosophy of every place I've ever worked, that you tighten it as much as you can to what you think you will expend, but when in doubt, have a little extra there. And so that's just a general budgeting guideline that we are going to try and hit as near the mark as we can, but we would rather have the allocation made so that there's no surprise for you as a council, and so that the staff wouldn't necessarily have to come back, especially for some lines that may, it may not be large dollar amounts. You know, in the scope of an entire budget, when we talk about 22 going to 41, I know these things add up. I don't know. Does that help?
It does. I just struggle with just adding money to the budget for fluff, right? Like I really struggle with that, and I get it, like being conservative, and I think on the other end, I would say that we want to be conservative with the responsibilities given to us is to monitor this budget. So I get it, and I understand coming under budget. Can I ask another question since we're on operation?
Let's stay with that because I agree with what Luke's saying. I don't disagree with you that every government agency overputs the budget. But what I've also seen and been involved with is every government agency says, since we got the budget, we got to spend it or it's suspend it or lose it type thing. And so I don't want our budget to be overstated. You know, I'd rather have us go under. We can come back you've got authority up to 30,000 or whatever it is. And that takes care of the minor stuff. I'd rather have a budget that is actual so that we don't facilitate the spend it or lose it philosophy.
So 2 quick comments. First, we do meet with every department to talk about these lines. So I sort of struggle with the idea that they're fluffed. So there's conservative budgeting versus fluff. And I don't think we ever try to fluff a budget. So I would disagree a little bit with that phrase. And then Mark, to your point, we don't operate as a spend it or lose it. That's not in the town's philosophy. It's not anything that's required of us. So a department has no incentive to just spend money for the sake of spending money. That incentive is not there. Those funds are retained. That's how we maintain our fund balance. So there is no culture of, well, because it's there, I just have to spend it. And in fact, we talk throughout the year. So the budget process happens in a specific period so that we can adopt as required by state law. But as an organization, we pride ourselves, I think, on trying to be prudent with tax dollars and not just spend for the sake of spending. So there's no incentive to where it's spend it or lose it that will pull you back next year.
And if I could just add something too, Luke, I didn't add this to my email to you, but those particular line items, some of the meetings, we did not have an all-staff meeting every month this year. And then also we're increasing staff for next year. So we anticipate some of those expenses to go up. We didn't meet because of COVID in the earlier months when it was really spiking. We anticipate having a monthly meeting in 2023. So that's why I didn't increase it above the 2022 budget. So it's actually flat from the 2022 budget to the 2023 budget.
Right. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Aaron, I didn't mean to use fluff. That's just because I think where I sometimes struggle with budgeting is saying, do we start with what we spend and add inflation to it? And sometimes that I just look and we go, even though it's flat, we only spent 20,000 and now we're at 41,000. That to me projecting not to, like, starting with 2022 going into 2023, that's spending not flat, right? And so I get it. I just, sorry for using the word fluff. I just don't.
No worries.
Yeah, so.
You had another thing, Luke?
Yeah, and Lisa, thank you again for, I know I've got lots of questions. The one that I really want to hit on for all the departments is the general office and administrative. There seems to be in, I
Where are you
suppose-
looking?
I'm looking on the line item detail. This is in section 2, and it's the preliminary drafts budget actuals to estimated. It's where it goes through each individual line item.
What line?
This would be, the first one that I'm looking at is line item 147. The next line item would be 179. And Lisa, I just need you to help me understand, like, this is another big one that I saw, and I don't understand going from 58,000 and then, Public Works is 0, and then we go to 233,000, and then, I know you said budgets were moving back and forth,
Yes.
so I just want to spend some time on this line item.
Sure. So the Public Safety General Office and Administration includes maintenance costs and utilities of the new PD building. So that did not exist before. I took an estimate based on this building and square footage, so we'll have to see if that's a reasonable amount. I got a little bit of input from Brian on that figure as well. So that's why it jumped so much on the public safety side. For Public Works, it's the same thing. So the building, let me see, which line is that? 179. That's the costs for Goodman that were previously under general government. So general government was capturing all of those maintenance and utility costs for Goodman, and now those are under Public Works.
So on 110, under general government, that went up as well.
110 went up because we anticipate needing tenant refinish to this building. And so I have $150,000 in there for this building to modify cubicles and so forth for the additional staff that we'll be adding.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa.
Mhm.
Did you have something, Brett?
Yeah, a couple questions there. I guess first, kind of on that same theme of digging the numbers a bit. I know, Chief, I kind of asked you a little bit about this last year. I'm going to ask again this year. The salaries there on public safety. I know last year there was quite a gap between projected and what was budgeted, and it looks like we're seeing quite a big jump again this year. I'm looking at line 146 for council members there. I don't mean this to sound accusatory, but I mean, are we sandbagging a little bit with the 3.2 million projected for public safety salaries, or I mean, it's just a jump of $800,000 from the previous year, and I think we're adding 4 positions for next year.
I'm going to ask Lisa for help on this one.
Sure.
Okay, sorry, jump in.
So let me look and see what I have projected.
Line
for-
146
At what page?
on the Town of Timnath General Fund budget there in section 2.
Okay.
Okay, so what that has to do with is just late timing on hiring for this year. And I still feel like we're going to be 1 short at the end of this year, or is it 2?
We're going to be too short.
2 short. So
Okay.
2 positions that we had anticipated having this year, we do not. And so I do have those in the 2023 projections. So that's why there's such a huge gap. I'm budgeting those positions for the entire year where we may not even have them filled by the end of this year.
Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, the reason we generally are seeing a big gap between our project and our budget is simply the challenge with finding good candidates for our police force. It takes time and
Exactly. Mhm.
extensive training time. And
Yeah, and we looked at it last year after you made that comment, and we said, okay, let's look and let's put 2 in June, 2 in April, and maybe 2 a little later, and we still did not meet those targets.
Okay. Well, I'm fine with setting a high bar for the police officers you hire. So I just wanted to make sure we were following that same thing of trying to get a good, accurate number on there. So thank you. A couple other questions.
Can I follow up on the
Yeah,
police then while we're on police?
Yeah.
So as you know, I think you guys do a great job. I'm really pleased with your officers. They do a great job in the community. I forget, who's the new young guy that just got sworn in, but I saw him pull his car over and buy a lemonade from one of the little girls that had her lemonade stand. I thought, oh, yeah, that's cool, and he did just such a great job with it. But you have told me last year that I came back and said the city of Fort Collins is at 1.6 officers per 1,000. And you said, well, I need 20 officers in order to do 24/7 coverage, and it's going to be a little bit excess of it, which at that time it was like 4-to-1. Now it'd be 2.8-to-1 at 22. I'm having a tough time reconciling adding 2 officers after that. We're almost double the coverage. And I appreciate that it's nice to have lots of coverage and stuff, but you told me specifically that we only need 20 officers for 24/7 coverage. And I'm having a tough time understanding why we got to go to 22.
Okay. Well, it's a good point, Mayor, and you're right. It's 20 officers. And I would caution that the reference to 2 per 1,000 on citizen numbers with officers with the numbers that you gave. Part of it is coverage itself. And to give you an idea, and this lends into the budget clearly, but right now we're at 16 individuals on the department. That's inclusive of myself and Robert as supervision. We've got 2 in backgrounds. If both of those are successful, I anticipate hiring them in November. And that's where the budget issue impacts is I have to bet on the come in as much. If I get them early, we have to pay them. If I don't, then it's funding that returns back to the town or to the general fund. And then I've got 2 more positions to be hired this year that I don't think I'm going to be successful in getting them. And the reason being is out of the last group of candidates where we have 2 in backgrounds right now, we had 21 applicants total. So that just whittles down just based on the testing techniques and then the background investigation. Where my concern rests, Mayor, is I have 5 different start times for the agency. So we spread officers out as most efficiently as we can, but sometimes there's only 1 officer on duty. And that to me is problematic because of a safety concern for the officers. Right now we start at 6 a.m. One officer starts at 9 a.m. One officer starts at 12 noon, and then 3 officers come on at 2 p.m. to work to midnight. So right now we're covering the hours of 6 a.m. to midnight, unbeknownst to the sheriff, because he covers from 10 p.m. until 8 in the morning. And I have 1 SRO that is dedicated solely to the high school, middle school, and so I don't even get to count that individual as far as street strength goes. The purpose for the increase is when we test for a sergeant this year, that comes out of my ranks of the total number of officers that we have. Moving forward, we need additional supervision because right now Robert covers the end of the week. I cover the beginning of the week, but that's on day shift. So we have nobody on, I would call it swings, so after 5 p.m. And then in 2023, we won't have anybody, any supervision in the hours of darkness, say from 10 a.m. to 8 in the morning. So that's the purpose for the increase in asking that the ranks be increased over a period of time. And we're hopeful to do this quickly, but here again, I don't know how our candidate pool will flesh out. The goal of 24/7 coverage, I believe we can achieve for 2023. However, there's a provision in the budget that we've asked the Sheriff's Department to cover us for 6 months in the event I lose members of the agency to other agencies. Right now, Windsor's on a hiring push for a sergeant. Fort Collins is constantly on a push, and the strength in Loveland is down. And I'm concerned that our officers are going to depart our agency to go elsewhere for, I'll call it additional ranks to move to. And of course, I'm asking for a lieutenant's position in 2023. We were asking for in 2024. but it falls into council goals about succession planning. So it was a thought, and of course that can be moved around as you see fit. But I thought, well, the sooner we get somebody up to speed, the better. But that's essentially the reasons behind the increase in personnel, is because I need additional supervision to cover the hours later on in the afternoon.
But Fort Collins would be in the same situation, so would Windsor. So why are you different?
Well, Mayor, Fort Collins has 230 officers.
Right.
Windsor's got in excess of 60, and I know that they're on a push to hire more. What I'm trying to do is ensure that the Timnath officers have additional coverage for protection. One, for the hours of darkness. I don't want one officer out at 2 in.the morning.
Totally agree with you.
Right. And then, Mayor, the other factor that when the first consultant came in some time ago and gave a ridiculously low number of officers, that doesn't account for mandatory training that we have to do according to post. That doesn't account for maternity leave, in which we had an officer who was pregnant this last year.
And just a sec, so I'm not talking about the prior test or the fact that you came in at, I think it was 16 or 15 officers was all you needed. I'm taking your words that you said last year in this meeting and said, we need to get to 20. When I was asking at that time, it was 4-1. Now, because the town's grown up, you know, the 20 gets divided by 8,000 instead of 6,000. And so, or 5,000. And so I'm using the numbers you gave me. And again, Chief, I'm not trying to be adversarial or anything else, but I want to make sure that, and I think everyone here understands that, hey, if you lose an officer and stuff, you've already got a backup, so you don't need to back up the backup. I mean, the sheriff's department's going to come in and help with the backup. So the fact that you're trying to back up a backup seems to be overkill to me.
Well, the concern, Mayor, is the sheriff repeatedly asks me, are you going to 24/7 in January? And so he could pull out tomorrow if he needed to, or if he wanted to. But thus far, we've got a great relationship, and I don't think Justin would leave me high and dry, nor do I think the oncoming sheriff will.
Yeah. So, and I agree with you. I think we've got a good relationship. We'll treat them well. They treat us well. I mean, I have a tough time with 22 officers in there this year. Next year, yeah. This year, I have a tough, I mean, by this year, I mean 23. I have a tough time that we're a good officer per 1,000 more than if you look at other police departments or anything else, that they just aren't that high.
Can I just add one point of clarification?
Sure.
On the PD staffing report for last year, we had 23, so it's an addition of 1 for next year. And then we had 24 in 2024. That's total FTE, so it would have been 22 sworn in 24 and 21 sworn in 2023. So it's just the addition of 1
I never
from
look at
last
the
year.
projection, because 24, who knows? The world's going to change 4 times by then. So
I just wanted to clarify
whatever
that
numbers
point.
you put in there for 24, I can tell you I didn't look at, and last year I didn't look at 23 either. So.
Can I request something that I think would be helpful? And I don't remember if it was last year or if it's been in previous years where we had kind of all, I don't know if anyone else remembers, it had all of the hours of the week and how many officers were going to be in all the different shifts. So it kind of laid it all out to really see the full picture of what it would look like. Would it be possible to get something like that again? And that would kind of maybe show visually what it would realistically look like. You know, if it's because we need overlapping or different things like that, I think it would help to kind of see something like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
For simplistic terms, there's 9 officers on the front of the week Wednesday's a heavy day in which all officers are on, and then there's 9 officers at the back of the week. So there's your 18, and then Robert and I would be 20.
Which is my 20.
Which is your 20, right, right.
So
And then, of
let's, yeah, I'm going to look at the council and look at you too, Chief. Let's go with Lisa's suggestion. Let's put sort of an asterisk by the number of officers that we're going to have in. For sure, we want 20, and we may get to 22, we may not, but let's table that discussion until we have some more info.
Okay.
Does that
Yep,
sound good?
Yep, not a problem.
Okay.
You bet.
Yeah, because I'm guessing they would be set shift hours, whether it's, 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. or I don't know what they would be.
Yeah,
Something like
they
that.
are. And I'll
Exactly.
get you, the council, a copy of this.
Thank you.
Brett, thanks for letting me interject.
Yeah, no problem. Helps if we kind of stay on similar themes here. I will shift gears a little bit here. Just wanted to get clarification on a couple of the assumptions. So you mentioned, Aaron, a recreational study to help guide future recreational programming. What exactly does that look like? What does a recreational study look like? Or Matt, if you're looking at Matt.
I am looking at Matt. This was a new one for me, but I'll let Matt explain. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Matt.
This was an effort to look deeper into what recreational programming the town can provide with the facilities we currently have.
So
and
is this
then
like surveys? Is this, I mean?
it'll definitely include surveys, and but it would be getting a group that is focused on recreational programming in terms of what communities like ours would need and want based on the makeup demographic of the community. So doing a more deeper dive than just per 1,000 people, we need X number of acres of park ground. We need X number of ball fields. We need X number of, this is like the specifics of, okay, this is programming trends, what people want and what the community wants. And we could do it ourselves to a degree, but I was looking to an outside consultant to come in and kind of put a package together.
So is
for it
this
now.
guiding future amenities we're going to build?
It'll inform some of those amenity program. It'll inform some of the future stuff. The rec
Okay.
center could start to inform some of the programming associated with the rec center, but it's looking more at what the community needs and wants would be from a recreational programming activities kind of a approach.
Okay. So if I'm understanding, we're trying to add a little expertise to the questions we'd bring to the community.
Yeah.
Help frame the questions we bring the community.
It
on.
would be like
Some of the-
specific, like, okay, we can, like I said, we can probably run some of these questions ourselves and surveys and
Right.
suss out some of that information. But it was looking to a third party to kind of like, that's in this space to give us some guidance on it.
Okay.
How much is this study?
I think we only had like 35,000 in there,
It's 78.
78,000, right?
So that's to one company, the 78?
To one, well, to one company plus staff time, I think was part of that equation.
So do you mind if I follow up? with
Go
some?
for it.
So we're adding a rec coordinator also, which is great. I
Yep.
don't have any problem, but it would seem that I'm going to go with your exact comment, which is we could do it ourselves. I mean, we've got, I consider one of the best community development directors there that I'm looking at. And I hope we hire a good and well-qualified coordinator. That gives you two guys to sort of bounce off and think things through, and that plus if you want to go to a conference or something to get some more ideas.
Sure.
To me, that would seem to be a better way. And then maybe in a year or two, if you still think that we're over our heads, then bring it back would be my suggestion.
I'd agree with that, Mark. It seems, I'm not clear on what objectives we're going to achieve on paying a consultant just yet. I think we have a pretty good feel for the kinds of amenities that.
And it's not necessarily amenities, maybe I wasn't clear, it's more the recreational side focus.
Programming.
Okay,
Programming, which goes hand in hand. And to your point, Mark, I mean, like I say, we can do a lot of it internally. It's somewhat a bandwidth issue. Bringing on a rec coordinator is key to that, as well as we do have it, when we talk about personnel, we have a park and rec director, park and rec manager in there, that those folks, when they start to gel, and they can bring forward something
Yeah,
too. So.
and they're going to be coming from different locations with different ideas. And I think I agree with Brett. I think we're premature with this study.
Yep, we can certainly pull that back, see where take the baby steps before we start
Okay.
running.
And yeah, I mean, if our new coordinator in 6 months wants to come ask us and talk to us about this, then fine, let's talk about it then.
Perfect.
Can I add on to that as well? So as a former CSU graduate in the health and exercise science program who needed to do 480 hours of unpaid work, I would suggest that we tap into some of the students at CSU who may be looking for a semester-long internship or project, because that would be something that would
Absolutely.
completely fit in with some of their programming there.
Okay, we'll look into that too. Good comments.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Brett.
Another consultant related question there for you, Aaron. Increase in economic development consultant. Is this essentially more of the types of reports we've gotten from Dan is what you're foreseeing with that?
Yeah, exactly, Brett.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood what was meant by that. And then just, I don't want to jump up too much to the CIP, but it's in the budget highlights here, so I just want to mention it. You talk about how you're reducing reliance on contractor positions and having more in-house employees, and as a result, this building will need to expand at some point. I think we'll want to see certainly more information on that in terms of the space we're going to have in the Public Works building when the police department moves out. Just what exactly looks like, what kind of timeline are you even thinking on that? Is this 5 years? Is this 20 years? Is this 3 years before we go there? So at some point, I'd like more information on that. So
Yeah, absolutely. As it pertains to this budget, Lisa kind of teed it up a little bit. We do have some money set aside for tenant finishes in this building. So not expanding the footprint, but doing a little, I don't want to, not a negative connotation, but almost a shell game. So one specific example is the office I'm in. I will move out of, and it will become space for 3 or 4 employees, and I'll move to a different office, that sort of thing. And because of that, there will be some costs incurred. We think that'll get us through the near
We were all
term.
talking about how come you had such a huge office.
Yeah. So that'll get us through the near term, but in the long term, and I don't feel comfortable to state a year. We will have to think about those
and I
options.
understand there's a lot of moving pieces there. Just what I'm thinking of is, if the community is going to be behind us spending a couple $1 million on this building to expand it, they're going to need to see a good reason why.
Absolutely.
And so whoever's on that council at that point will be able to show this building is full, the Public Works building is full. So just make sure we've got a good narrative there that makes sense to people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comment. We certainly, I don't think as a staff, we want to go through the expansion either.
Good.
So our preference is to use this footprint as long as humanly possible, for sure.
Okay. Brett? I think that was all I had for now.
Lisa, do you have anything?
For the summary part, I don't think so. I think most of my questions are a little bit further on.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where you want us to go. So good question, Lisa. So for where it says draft budget and it's the last of the writing, I've got everything too, but then I've got questions on when we hit the budget as projected and 2021 actuals and estimates. Are we holding off on that for you to give us a presentation, or do you want us to start in on that, or what?
I thought we would cover that in less than 15 minutes, so I obviously underestimated that. According to the agenda, we should be talking about personnel right now, so I can handle it either way. If they're real specific questions, I can handle them offline, and then we can follow up, or if they're larger questions, we can discuss them.
I think my questions, I'd like to let the council hear
Okay.
the whole thing.
Okay.
So
We'll just continue on, and then if we need to
if
schedule a
we
second.
run out of time, we'll set up another work
Sounds
session
good.
for a half hour or sometime before or after a meeting.
Mark, I actually just noticed something I had noted in here. It wasn't so much a question, but it's in section 2. It's on, oh goodness, it's the page that's right before the lines with the roads and utilities, parks and rec, all of that. And there's public safety, and it's just the wording. I don't want to give the public the wrong idea, but the wording says the 2023 budget also includes contracted services with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office for 6 months, animal control, and a school resource officer. So the way I read it is it looks like it's that the Larimer County Sheriff's Office is providing all of those. And I don't believe that that was our intention. So if we could just so
clean
that
that
it's
up.
clear to the public.
I'll clean that up. Thank you.
So Lisa, I'm going to go through the budget here real quick on what. So under licenses and charges, we went, this is a good thing, or I guess it's a bad thing, $10 million. We went down to 7 million. What happened? I'm sure there's a good reason. I just like to know it for my own edification. So I'm on the first page of the budget, and it's line 5. Thank you.
I'm looking at the detail now. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
I think, Lisa, that if you flip 2 pages forward, Mark, it looks like the contract reimbursements.
Yeah, we had
Line 77.
large contract reimbursements for parkway improvements that are included in your restricted fund balance for future parkway from landings. That was a big part of that 10 million. And then we just had more building going on last year than projected this year.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
The 1/4 cent funds reserved for, that's for open space? Is it reserved for open space?
You can do open space acquisition. It could be maintenance of open space. So it technically could be used for any parks and rec programming. Mhm.
So like when we're improving the parks, can we use that money?
Yes,
Okay.
the language is yes.
Town administration, and we can wait on this because it's salaries and benefits. I'd just like to know, so we're going from 1,136 in 21 to 23, 1,000,008. I know that you didn't get that big a raise. So could you tell me the people
Yeah.
that
So-
increased there?
So 2021 only include partial year for an attorney and a paralegal because we hired them not for the full year. So that's why the 2021 is a little bit lower than the 2022 estimate. The 2020.
Because before they were in contract labor or something?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And then 2023 includes the 3 positions, the HR, the senior accountant, and the procurement coordinator.
Okay,
In
those 3.
addition to, mhm.
Thanks. Economic development is, and maybe you touched on that before, Aaron, is that something we're going to talk about in a little bit on economic development plans, or what? It's gone from 23,000 to 217,000. I'm on line 113. What's going on there?
So we do anticipate more development. So we could talk specifically about EPS, who has helped us out in the past. We want to record it as an expenditure because it will be. Oftentimes those can be included as part of a fee agreement when the development comes in. So for example, when we talk specifically about Ladera, that's part of the fee agreement with them. So we're reimbursed for those costs. We do just anticipate more development happening with that specific area. There's development starting at the Club Harmony intersection. And so it's just us trying to make sure we're prepared for that.
So,
It also
so
includes-
who's that money
I'm sorry.
going to?
So specifically, we've used Dan from EPS most recently.
Okay. What would we need him for? I'm trying to understand. What would we need him for on economic development?
So what he has done for us in the past is to look at developments, specifically like with Ladera, they're making requests of significant incentives. And so he has been there to provide the analysis of
Right,
that.
and so we did the analysis of that. So that 217's totally for studies for him?
No, what I budgeted was just $100,000 placeholder for a consultant in case we needed it. And then $100,000 for a small business incentive. I know we have talked about that and we haven't brought it forward, but I just wanted to have something in the budget so that way we have it appropriated and council can determine whether that's appropriate or not. But I did include.
So it's the small business loan program we talked
Yes,
about.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
and if
makes
it's a
sense.
revolving loan fund, then the revenue will come back, but we'll have to show that expenditure.
Okay, I'm not a placeholder fan, so I'd like to remove the 100,000. And then if we decide we got a consultant and we've got the money, that we then bring it in front of the council and we pass it then. But just to have a number in there, I'm not a big fan of, as is Luke.
I'm actually a fan of the placeholder if it's something that we are thinking that we will
Yeah,
spend. And so I would much rather have it in the budget so that if it's something we want to move forward with, we can. Just as if I create like a home budget and I want a vacation to Hawaii, I put it in there, doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but I would rather have that money reserved for that purpose.
We could reduce it. The one thing I will say is then you will see a lot of supplemental appropriations next year as these things change. So we can do it that way because if we decide that, yes, we do need to spend this money on a consultant, we would bring the agreement and then you would have to appropriate at that time. And it wouldn't be included in any of our cash flow projections. So you're making assumptions and decisions now based on us potentially needing that. If we back it off and we increase CIP, then our cash position changes quite a bit down the road. So just keep that in mind.
yeah, I'm still not a fan of the 100,000 because we don't know what it's going to. Whereas we did talk about the incentive and we talked about it probably around 100,000 and having that. I'm fine with that, even though it's not, that's still in the fair, that's still in the ether. Whereas this has really, maybe we will use it and stuff on it. And I'd rather, besides the fact I'm not a big fan of using consultants unless you need them. I just am not. I think Luke's that way. Give me a, yeah, I think we're all that way. So let's pull out. All of us that matter.
I'm neutral on it, so I'm half with you. I only half matter, Lisa.
Not nice.
And I think from my perspective, Aaron and Lisa, I think it's hard to know at this level what is necessary. Like I kind of talked about it earlier, like I agree with Mark. I don't want to just have placeholders. And I think what's hard is, just knowing like through this, our high level, and this is where I struggle with being a council members versus what I like to do is, do I dive in? Do I stay out? So I think that please push back on us. Like if there's something, because I look and I go, we spend 16,000 in the municipal court. We're projected to spend 19,000, then there's 45,000. That's just tough. That's tough for, like to have those as placeholders, right? Like why not put that in the general fund and save it? I'm not necessarily thinking we should increase the CIP on the other end. I'd rather have it so we can have things that maybe come up later, but it's tough. It's really tough being on this side of the numbers.
Sure, that completely makes sense. I will just say that we have consistently spent consulting money on economic development. And in 2021, it was around 24,000. This year, it's estimated 30. So I do think it's prudent that we are going to spend something so that we do have something, whether that's $100,000 that we can reduce it. But I do think we need something in there. That's my.
Well, if we did 30 last year and we're thinking we're going to be more, let's say 50. Robert, I'm going to look to you on this next question, and it's on the municipal court. You're saying, well, we're going to double the number of meetings that we're going to have. When I was there, it didn't seem like they were at capacity, even with what was there, that, she got it done in a couple hours. He got done in a couple hours. That, I would agree that it might go from 2 hours to 4 hours, but.
Yeah, and I do think that the docket was a lighter one the day that we were there, and that the 2
And I'm
months
asking you,
before
you
that,
know more about it than I do.
We're a little bit bigger. I also know that we're looking to do an RFP on the prosecutor, and that I think we're going to end up paying a little bit more than we're paying now.
We might,
when
yeah.
that comes through. So,
All right. Let's leave it. Now, maybe I'm jumping the gun on salary, so I can ask this later. On Parks and Rec, it goes from 127 to 805. And I know that's people. What's the people that we're adding?
We're moving parks maintenance specific people from Public Works over to Parks. So all of this.
So it's really a accounting
Yeah,
deal? Okay.
it's 3.75 FTEs that we transferred from Public Works over to Parks.
And then general office and administration goes from 0 to 233. Is that the two positions you're adding?
No, which line are you looking at? Are you looking at Public
I'm
Works?
sorry, 179.
That's what Luke was asking earlier. That's the Goodman facility costs. So those were previously under general government, and all
Okay.
of the maintenance and utilities will now be under Public Works.
Okay, great. That's all I had. Anybody else? Okay, take it away, Lisa.
We were scheduled for a break at 4 o'clock. Do you guys all want to take a break before we dive into personnel, or would you rather go through?
I don't think we need a break right now. We might
Okay.
take one a little later, but.
Okay, in that case, we'll charge on through personnel. I will try and keep my comments brief, but really, in trying to sum up what we've done in personnel, we've tried to honor the council's requests in terms of making a transition from consultants to internal, specifically by bringing in an HR generalist, a Parks and Rec director, a Public Works and town engineer. That would be the Public Works director / town engineer, and a senior planner. All of those are positions that we would anticipate replacing folks who work for us contracted at this point, that we think will help us to function better as we continue to grow as a community. At the highest level, that's it. We have the ability to talk about some of these specific positions that are laid out in your binder. So if there's specific personnel questions, it might be easier in the interest of time for me to throw it to you instead of saying other things I was going to say, and let you take it from there.
That sounds great.
I just have a question about, so converting the currently vacant Parks and Rec program coordinator to Parks and Rec director. I know that we've talked about that position for a while, and I'm just wondering what happened. Is it because we didn't get qualified applicants, or so I guess the reason why, and then changing that position now, is it because we didn't get people, or?
I'll start, and then I think Matt can chime in. We did have a Parks and Rec coordinator who has since left, and it was right around the time we were looking at these projections. And when we looked at these projections, we really felt like hiring a Parks and Rec director who could oversee some of the maintenance, the recreation, and everything, and offload some of the consulting time that is being spent there, that was a better use of those dollars, and that then they would be able to hire a Parks and Rec coordinator. So
That was spot on. So did she answer the question, or do you need me to add more?
Yeah, yeah, because I think when we talked about it last time, I know that position was going to have a pretty wide breadth of what they needed to do, and I just didn't know if it was because of that it was vacant. I know it was related to the reservoir and water testing and that piece, or something with the water.
Okay.
And then obviously that's typically a different skill set than, for example, someone who would do youth and adult programming or something like that. So I just didn't know if that was a concern.
Yeah, so I'll explain a little bit of it. The rec coordinator position that we had hired was intended to, person that we hired had a lot of recreation specific experience, but needed to have more of the management operations experience as well. And trying to bridge those two gaps was a challenge. So that was one of the primary reasons. So we have the vacancy now, but we felt like maybe a more senior position hire could actually cover a more broader reach versus trying to bring somebody to the junior or entry level thing and having them overreach. So that's kind of the reason we've kind of shift focuses there to get a little bit more of a broader hands-on of being able to put somebody in and capture a lot more of the functions.
I guess, Aaron, I have a general question. I know Mark doesn't like to look out for the projections, but I just want to ask, like, when I ran the FTE numbers going from where we stand, a base and estimated, we're going from 84, or excuse me, from roughly 56 to 68, and then all the way up to 84. And so I look at that number and I say, well, that's an FTE increase of like 47%, right? If you're looking at those numbers, and then we're projecting revenue growth out. And I just want to understand how this, like, revenue growth over that same time period is only going to be 31%. So, and then, our expenses are jumping 62% in that same thing. So can you help me understand, like, is going from that just revenue versus FTEs, can you walk me through that long-term strategy? Because if I just don't want to outstrip our growth with FTEs. Like, if we're not planning to, see the same revenue increases, and I know it's not dollar for dollar, but I don't want to just, we're going to grow, and then we're planning FTEs and we've just put it all in that area. How do we balance that, and how do you balance that in your budget to think that eventually we're going to top, and then sales tax is going to top, but that's a large FTE growth over that time period?
Sure. So a couple of comments. First one, what we're adopting is 23. 24 and beyond is all projections. So if we don't feel like revenues are coming in as anticipated, then we have you as a council have all the prerogative to tell us to pump the brake, and we sure can do that. The other thing I would say is, this is to the assumptions and what Lisa talked about earlier. We are assuming basically almost a worst case scenario, in a sense that our revenues are projected lower than we think they will be, and our expenditures are projected higher than we think they will be. So we're trying to be as cautious as we possibly can be when you talk about there being sort of a gap or a delta in those percentage changes. We are probably significantly overstating what the true delta would be between those by trying to be as conservative as possible. So those are just sort of general comments. The other thing I would say is, one of the, if you could boil it down to one metric, it would, I think, be our reserves and how that number fleshes out through the projection. And that number suffers in 1 year, specifically 27, because we're taking on a significant capital project related to County Road 5. But otherwise, our reserves stay well within policy. And so the money will continue to be there under those projections. I hope that helps. Those are very generic comments.
Yeah.
But kind of our operating mindset.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I know we don't like to look at it, but throwing numbers out there, I got to dive into them. So thank you.
And I'll just kind of add a comment that I noticed with that trend there. I mean, you're talking about, Luke, adding about 27 new positions between 2022 and 2027. 10 of those are police officers and 10 of those are parks employees. I mean, those are ones that we can certainly be a little bit flexible with. And most of those are, maintenance employees. And so it's assuming we're going to have 6 different parks if in the capital improvement plan that we're going to add. So some of that's going to be dependent on if we have the funds for it. One question I'll throw out to you, Aaron, just to make sure I understand. I know we touched on some of the challenges in hiring police officers. You and we've talked about some of the challenges in hiring town engineers recently. I mean, what concerns do you have in terms of being able to fill these positions for this 2023 year?
Yeah, no, good question, Brett. I mean, we're not unique. I think employers, I mean, as you drive down Harmony, how many of the establishments do you see with help wanted signs? I mean, it seems like it's more than half. We're going to experience that like anyone else would, private or public. You know, I think the town is well positioned, that I think we have a good reputation. I think we have a good plan going forward. I think for a lot of folks, and I'm going to speak for myself, although I think there are other folks who are in the organization who would echo this sentiment. I've been here a little over a year and a half. I was drawn to Timnath because I perceived it to have a strong reputation. I perceived it to be an organization that was growing and doing exciting things. And so I think that's going to help us attract people, just like it did for me.
I just know we've had challenges hiring that town engineer position, some police officer positions. My concern, I guess, is are we going to have to budget more money than we're expecting to fill some of these positions to get the right applicants?
Yeah, no, let me get more to the point then. I mean, we've had employers council. So just as they helped us to set salary ranges, and we discussed that last meeting or 2 meetings ago, I apologize, they run together on me a little,
Right.
but we've had them look at these as well. And so we have the best information, including relying on them, and this really is their bread and butter, to help us set what we think are competitive ranges. We're not really going to know truly until we dip a toe in the water.
Okay. Have we had any luck with that engineer position recently?
We have
Okay.
Corey Flood. He started with us, was
Great.
that last week? Yeah, last
Great.
week.
Well, welcome, Corey, if you're listening.
Yeah.
All right. So that was all the questions I had on the employee projections.
Mine is just a real short one because we kind of talked about the one I had the biggest question with. And again, this is part of the projected, so I know that this can change. This is not set in stone. But the one thing that I kind of noticed was that under events, that tends to be the only area that by 2027 still has contracted positions. And I would just say that we could look at that and figure out a way to incorporate that into a non-contracted position. Obviously, that's so far out there, but if that's something that we could move up a little bit, it would just seem weird to have those 3 positions be the only contracted employees.
Yeah, it's certainly something we keep an eye on. We've actually, so our contracted folks who do events, I think we can mostly agree, do an excellent job. We've actually talked to them about their potential desire to come on board. At this point, they actually don't have that desire. My position would be, even though they're contracted, I would prefer to keep people who are effective and to evaluate each position uniquely. So if we have somebody who we feel like as a contractor is giving us good return on investment, is doing an effective job, we don't want to necessarily push them out of the organization. So there are just a couple of those where we feel like we do have good return on the investment.
That's all.
And I know we asked the chief to come back with some more information, but I do have just a couple of comments on the police staffing. As we try to transition to 24/7, I think back to our retreat, and I think I mentioned that I expected this would be a challenging time as we get over that hump. And I've looked at the chief's projections. I agree with him that 20 is a number that you can go to 24/7. In a prior life, I was in police administration and I looked at all the scheduling options, whether it's 410s, 5/8s, 12s, staggered shifts, front side, back side. And I think 20 is a way to do it with a very slim margin of error. And that as we look at things like, just 1 or 2 employees leaving, replacing them is, something that is a 6 or a 9 month process before they're functional. And, things like sick leave, maternity leave, injuries, people going off duty due to, maybe there's an officer involved shooting and they have to be taken off for that, things like that, it's a challenge. So I do think that this contingency plan of having the sheriff's department maintaining that positive relationship both with the current sheriff and the future sheriff to make sure that we have that buffer makes sense. So I do like that is still in the budget.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that we should leave it at 22?
I think that 20 is a very slim there's not a whole lot of room for error there. And that this is kind of, I perceive this as a hill that we want to clear and get on the other side of, and not constantly be right on that bubble of, does this work? Does this not work?
Great political speech.
Yeah.
So do you think we should be at 20 or 22?
I think to do it right, we need to, have that margin of error to have a little bit of buffer there.
To have the 22.
Yeah, and I noticed a couple other things in the projection. I know the chief is absolutely trying to be responsible here and trying to do more with less. But I look at pushing the detective off a couple of years. And my position is, if we're going to be a full-time 24/7 police department, part of that is you have to have a professional detective in the organization. That street officers, as much as they want to do a quality investigation, we typically haven't invested the training and experience for them to handle those more complex cases. And so I'm actually a little bit concerned about delaying that as is suggested. And then I see that we delayed the code enforcement officer, or that's 2024. I think that's a great idea. I think this is a great option to go from contract to in-house. My question is, why can't we do that in 2023? It seems like it's probably about the same cost, and maybe could we just do that?
So I'll jump in and might signal to Matt, but currently our contracted code enforcement is through Safe Build, and they have included that person without additional charge. And they agreed to do that through 23. So we had actually budgeted to go internal in 23 until they offered that to us. And so it was kind of if it isn't broke, don't fix it.
Sure.
He's done, I think, a good job. And to get that position filled without any cost, new cost, we thought made sense.
Hopefully that helps. If we can get it for free.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
I want to pull back then. So I think you're recommending that we go with the police for Chief's suggestion of 22. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Lisa, what do you think?
I'm fine with that as well. The whole piece about the police detective, I don't know enough about that to know whether that's something that's necessary right now. But if that's something that's necessary, I would think that we could look into that as well.
I would still like to see a staffing model. I want us like 24/7
Staff involved.
the staffing model. The staffing
okay.
model that was
Okay.
projected. I still want to see it because I work with EMS. We kind of have the same 24, 7 days a week. And what we incorporate is non-productive time, we call it, right? That's training, education, FMLA, sick, whatever you want to call it. And I know you have to have that buffer in there, right? Because an officer comes off the street, you either have to fill it with OT, or even in EMS, we have PRNs, right? Which doesn't happen in law enforcement, right? You don't have PRNs. And so I want to see the staffing model before I make that call, because I think I get it. And I want to see how the staffing model is before deciding.
I'm kind of with Luke on that. I mean, I don't know that I have an inherent issue with going to 2022 or going to 22 officers. I just want to see the report myself as well.
So I think we're all sort of this, we'd go to 22 if we get approved, if we can't not, and go that way. And thanks for your comments, Robert. Any more personnel questions? See, I knew that was going to be easy. We already talked about it, really.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. So just based on this conversation, we're going to proceed with everything is outlined in the memo you received, with the caveat that we will circle back with
On the-
additional information for the PD.
For the safety department,
Yep.
yeah. Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
you bet.
With that, we will, so maybe I'll make a call now. We delayed the break. Do we need a break now, or do we want to continue to roll forward?
How are you guys doing?
We are actually getting close to caught up. So if we wanted to take 5, I think we can definitely swing that. I'll leave it to you all.
All right, we'll take 5.
Okay, perfect.
And then we're going to do 5-year improvement, capital improvement. Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll dive right into the CIP, exactly.
Okay. And Lisa, good job on all that.
So I think it would behoove us to have you all sort of drive this conversation, if that makes sense.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go item by item, look to everybody. If you got a comment or question or something, speak up, yell at me, whatever, and we'll just go. So I-25 Prospect Interchange, Whitesell Street, Walnut, Walmart traffic improvements. I got a question here, but does anybody else? You, Luke? Or? No, I am on B. Whitesell Street, Walmart traffic improvements. Okay.
Is this something new, Mark, or have we talked about this before?
Did you have something? Did you want to say something, Robert?
I'd be happy to say something.
I figured you would.
Councilman Wagner and I have been working with town staff, and this is a topic that keeps going. There's a situation that's going to be tried here in the short term. I think town staff is more optimistic than I am. I won't speak for Mr. Wagner, but my position is we should have some money in the budget to be willing to contribute to fixing the issue.
Could I ask a question, Lisa, on this? There's 600,000 in the 2022 budget. Did we spend 600,000 on this?
No, we haven't. We've spent very little consulting
Yeah,
time on
that's
it.
what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. Luke?
Yeah, and we've had a lot of conversations around Walmart. I think my struggle is allocating funds to this with how much work we can actually get done. And that's been the challenge. And, I think if we think we can get there, I'm always want to allocate more money to this project. I just feel like we're struggling to get to a solution, any kind of solution. And I don't know, like I feel there should be improvements, there needs to be improvements, but I don't know what that right number is. Cause I think the roundabout is $2 million last time we talked. So I think that's the struggle is can we get anywhere? And that's what I'd look to this team for is can we get to the roundabout? Probably not next year, right? We shouldn't even do that. So the 200,000 is just for lane improvements.
So just a sec. So that's a shot, and I'm going to do the other and then let you guys take over and explain it out. Because the lane improvements, I understand, just going to be painting in the street. And so what happens in December when snow's all over there and people are playing bumper cars trying to get whichever lane that they're trying to find out? So if you could answer Luke's and answer mine questions, that'd be great.
So the interim improvements we're trying to get them to do is some changes to the striping at the intersection to create a pocket for vehicles to sit in to wait to turn into Murphy, which is still
It's striping and signage.
striping and signage, which is the biggest conflict at the moment. From that, we've still been working with Walmart and their engineer, going back and forth on possible solutions. They're not wanting to do a lot. The 200 in here is to push towards widening that intersection to get an actual dedicated turn lane for cars turning into Murphy. So to take that from 3 lanes to 4 lanes, and possibly allowing the 2 entry lanes to continue straight to the front of the store, which is something Walmart does not want to do. They want to keep traffic away from the front of the store. So that's why they've been opposed to anything that pushed traffic further north.
Yeah, to be clear, the reason we're getting less and less communication with Walmart, we think, is because they have little or no complaints about this intersection now. And so with no complaints, it's no issue to them. And when we got traction years ago, there was complaints every day. And so that's not the case right now. But we do have, Eric does have the ear of the most recent person, and we truly believe we're going to get some striping done, and maybe a little more if it continues. But I do want to address the roundabout. I think the roundabout it's a non-starter. You'll never see that roundabout there.
And the reason for that is, number one, all the existing stuff, the lost business that they're going, that all the people would have, including Walmart, with trying to build a roundabout in that location, I think would rival the cost of the roundabout.
Are we getting money? At one time, we were going to get money from each one of those stores like Chick-fil-A and whoever else, the gas station. Are we still getting any money from them or not?
We don't think so.
Okay.
And to lead into another capital project, there's the park improvements down there behind Wendy's. Do we anticipate that's going to create issues in this, and maybe it'll bring more complaints, or how do we anticipate that traffic affecting this intersection?
I think I would anticipate that those improvements will not generate additional trips. What those improvements are basically completing the soft trail loop around the reservoir. There's an inlet ditch crossing that is probably half of that money. And we're adding a couple more picnic tables and a couple more trees. We're not making any substantial improvements out there to draw more people out there because, while we feel like that's a big amenity to the town because there's open fishing there, it's not restricted like the reservoir is. We can always point people in that direction. The majority of the users that use that park are not town residents. So there's we want to make it nice, but we don't want to spend a ton of our park dollars over there because we don't think it's a necessarily large value for our residents.
Whitesville Street extension to County Road 5. Anybody? Parkway improvements. Anybody? I got a quick question that we've got 7.2 million in the 22 budget. We just slid that across to 2023, right?
Yes, for the most part.
Okay. Anybody else? Parkway from Bus Grove north to Maine. Main Street Railroad Crossing. Main Street Bus Grove to Prospect.
I got something on that one. You mentioned in the report, I believe, that there was some timing dependent on factors on development occurring around there for this project to happen. Am I recalling that correctly? Which development exactly are we waiting on?
The first piece is Fisher.
Okay.
Is that right? Fisher Farms, which is improving a significant portion of the frontage.
Okay.
And so they're responsible to improve their half plus one lane the other direction.
Okay.
Because we already have the right of way on the east side, this was to partner with them to complete the northbound lanes and bike lane and shoulder, complete the section in front of their property and not just leave it as a 4-foot shoulder.
Okay. And we're fairly certain this is going to be 23 and 24, or is this pretty soft?
They're approved.
They're approved.
Correct, Brian? Yes. It's approved. We don't know, we don't, they're the ones that pull the trigger, but if I had to bet, I would say it's going to happen in that time frame.
Okay.
And to be clear, the money we're saying we're having there is to contribute so it can be built totally out with the contractor that they have.
Okay.
Okay.
And my understanding is the parkway is going to eventually connect into this part that is being improved as part of this line item.
The Parkway will connect back into Main Street south of the portion that they're expanding. So the work
So this will be part of that general north-south.
It'll be general the north-south
route that someone will follow.
Right. None of this will be replaced by the Parkway. There's another quarter mile south of what they're improving this time to the Parkway start to turn off.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I just had a question about this one. Is there a possibility that they Excel, or I think it's Excel who has the power lines, are they thinking about putting any of those power lines underground when any of this road work is being done?
Fisher would be required to underground the power on their side of the road when they improve the road.
Okay, because I know there was an incident this week. Obviously, a couple of years ago, we had the lines all come down. So I was just kind of curious if we were going to do something, why not try to work with other?
Yeah, code requirement is when they improve the frontage, the lines have to go underground.
Okay, thank you.
Main Street, south of Harmony and Bridge, that's really goes all the way out. It's sort of a placeholder for the future. Main Street, Timnath Elementary to Bus Grove is also sort of a placeholder. And then Bus Grove landing to Water Tower. Could you explain that? I don't quite understand that one.
That is the piece of Bus Grove. Last year we were calling phase 3, so to speak. It's along the north side of the Landings property where the curves are with the irrigation ditch.
Is that our share, the 950 our share, or because Landings has to pay the south side of that, right?
Landings has to pay the south side. We have a irrigation ditch crossing that unfortunately is just east of Landings property. So the majority of this covers the new irrigation ditch box, which the north half would be covered by the White Wing development. There's a proposed development on the north side, which is what we were looking to partner with in order to be able to straighten that road out completely and get rid of the curves.
How are we doing on that project? Have they come back to us or not?
Yes, we're working on an annexation right now and a sketch plan, and they're moving forward in the process.
So we might in 2023 be able to straighten out Bus Grove.
Yep.
Yes.
That would be the hope.
That would be nice. Okay, Bus Grove, Main to Frontage Road, I think it's a placeholder. Latham Parkway, Wild Wing to Highway 14. Anybody? Latham Parkway to Prospect Road, intersection improvements.
I do have a question. Is this one, although it's not in the area, just, I guess that'd be south of that, where the railroad crossing is that a future CIP to improve that?
The railroad crossing would be way south of this section. The railroad crossing would be south of Twin Bridge. As that is not currently in the town, it's not on the CIP list at all because it's in the county. It is one of the crossings that CDOT is using federal funds for to improve with signalization, along with the Main Street crossing. So they're partnering with the railroad to improve that crossing, is my understanding, which should be, as I was told a month ago, hopefully be happening next year in 2023.
Latham Parkway to Prospect Road, intersection improvements. Latham Parkway south of Harmony Road. Timnath Landings traffic signal. Harmony Road widening to 6 lanes. That'd be a nice day. 4th Street pedestrian improvements. We don't even have it on there, okay. 4th Street sewer connections. Beth Key School Zone is a placeholder. Harmony Club Fired Access Drive. Isn't that done? Okay. And then broadband. Anybody? So I don't feel comfortable putting 2 million in there when we haven't even totally made the decision to do it. I think it needs to be the whatever 150 or so that we allocated for the study. But you know, that study, by the time it gets here, there's no way that we'll be able to start in on broadband and stuff, I don't think. So I don't know if we want to put 2 million there.
I will say that I'm accounting for the federal ARPA funding of 1.2 to offset that 2 million. So the net is $800,000 town investment.
Same answer.
Okay.
I guess the question is, what exactly do we intend to do with that 2 million? Because we're not just going to spend that on studies, right?
Correct. No, I think, so there's two pieces to this, right? There is one piece I think that will come directly out of the study, which is we should start investing in conduit in the developments that are currently under construction because of the savings of going in while they're doing the work as opposed to coming back and putting that stuff in later. So I think that'll be a recommendation coming out of the study. The second one is I think we want to be able to show in our grant applications that we have money set aside to partner for those grant applications. So while we can't spend any of that money without coming to you guys to have you authorize it, save Aaron's $35,000 approvals, all of that has to come back to you guys before we can spend it. But we want to be able to show in grant applications, and if we do want to start putting conduit in some of these new places, that we have the funds available for it.
When would you anticipate needing to spend that by? I mean, is this before we know what our grant status is, or?
So one of the things that we're going to work on first with Ditesco is kind of like how these grants work, because it's not going to be, we're not going to get one grant that's going to do everything, right? We're going to piece together several different funding sources to make the project. And it's going to be probably many, many different projects that come together in that way. So while I have a kind of high level understanding of how that's going to work, I don't have like a lot of specifics about it yet.
Okay. I mean, I do feel like we do need some money set aside there. This is something that the community's expressed a desire for us to spend resources on. And I also understand that it's hard to have specific details at this point. Personally, I don't have an issue with the 2 million. If it feels like it's not going to work out, then we can always reel it back to later. We don't have to spend that money. But I do want some money set aside for us to get started on the project.
I might have a comment later, but not now.
I personally think that the internet in my area is terrible. I work from home some days, and then I see on Facebook that it goes down every day, all day. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And I think the community continues to support this, so I'll support this in the budget.
Buildings, we have nothing on in 23, so I'm going to skip over that unless somebody wants to talk about it. Timnath Community Park. So I've got a question to Lisa. It shows 1.7 million in 2022 and 500 in 2023. Did we spend $1.7 million?
We have not spent that yet.
So are we anticipating this? So in our packet this time, we're showing a 2.3 to 2.6 potentially spent on the community park. And explain to me how, let's say that the council says we want to spend the 2.3 on the community park and get it done. How does that work into this budget?
I would just move it up. It's coming out of restricted funds, so it wouldn't really impact anything.
So you're just going to slide the 1.7 over to the 5 and it'll be 2.2.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
It was just an estimate on timing, and we will get closer to that probably in the November timeframe. We'll see how much we anticipate spending, and then we'll make those adjustments.
But that keeps us in budget though also, as far as
So that way
we've got the revenues and stuff to take care of it if that's 2.2.
Exactly.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Anybody else? Okay. Water rights.
Can I speak about that one, Mark?
Yes, you may.
This is one of my big items. So 200,000, what do we anticipate spending it on? And I would support more. It would be my opinion. I think that is this just all non-pot water getting for the parks? And because I know some of those water shares are extremely expensive. So I was hoping you could walk me through this number and what you're thinking.
So what we're trying to acquire a non-potable or raw water portfolio. We have not been able to acquire any shares yet, but we'd be looking specifically for either Timnath Reservoir shares or Lake Canal shares. We don't, right now, we don't need to build any additional systems because all of our parks are on non-potable systems currently. So we're just looking to kind of develop that portfolio to put water into those systems. The reservoir right now is taken care of, but it's the community park and then any park expansions that we do in Timnath Ranch, which would be the Heritage Park, the Timnath, we're calling it now Timnath Ranch Park. Is that what we're calling it? Timnath Ranch Park, and those would run off of out of the Timnath Ranch non-potable system, which we're a partial owner of, but we need to acquire water rights to put into that water system so that we can use that water. So really what we're doing is we have placeholders here. So as the shares become available, we'll be able to bring them to you and we can get those purchased.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, we do have one share of Box Elder, which we haven't been able to find a way to use yet. And we've bought into a augmentation plan that gives us the right to pump the water that we do at the reservoir park now.
Thank you.
Truck Trail. Timnath Reservoir Trail and Park. And it's
Oh, nice. What did you find?
What did she ask? Or did she just sneeze? Okay. So I'll make a comment here. Timnath Reservoir Trail. I understand that the Timnath Reservoir Ditch Company is going to make a dirt road around Timnath Reservoir to some extent. And while they're doing that road, it would seem to make a lot of sense that we improve that road so that we've got a trail. I mean, my goal is to have all the way around Timnath Reservoir at some point. I think in passing with Matt, he said that would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, $7 million or something. Maybe I talked to Brian. Just a sec. So if it's 7 million, that's fine. But I'd like to see us start putting money in. And so I'm going to go back up to the broadband at 2 million. If that's taking away 2 million that we could put this next year into the trail and park, I'd rather see us put it into the trail and park as a budget item, especially where we probably aren't going to spend that in 2023, 2024 probably, but not 2023. So take it over from there.
Well, and Mark,
And
just
go ahead.
Lisa had said that 1.2 million of that 2 million would be money coming into us
Yeah.
as well. So I don't know that it would be able to
So
be
it's
used.
800,000.
So it would be 800,000.
So I want to address the Reservoir Ditch Company. This is brand new information about them building that bench. We just found out about this maybe 3 weeks ago. So we're kind of reacting to that a little bit. I agree with what you're saying. If they're building a bench, I think this is the perfect time for us to leverage that. Maybe if they put the foundation in and we could build onto that, we could get a lot of trail built. Up until this point, we were thinking that, meaning the town was the one
we'd have to do it all.
having to do the front and on top of it. So,
Yeah.
so if they're doing their bit, which they're talking about doing in October, September, later this month and in October, that actually, we haven't even had a chance to, as staff level, kind of even react to that thing. So that's kind of one piece of this. But Brian, the 7 million, yeah, that is a big number to go all the way around. He was just basically, I think, saying $1 million a mile kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I
it
don't
was-
care what the real number
Yeah.
is. I was hoping that it would be only 2 million.
Yeah, yeah.
We could go
But-
do it. Well, that's pie in the sky. I get that.
And if you look at how we have the CIP structured, 2022, 2023 was going to be a small number, 200,000. That was more of like a design year, kind of laying things out, figuring out the best pathway. And then if you look at 2024, it's a bigger chunk, 1.5, and we would start doing those phases of trail. That was kind of the thought process on how we were going to take these down, is like a design year and a construction year, kind of one and then the other. But now I think this has turned a little bit on its head now with the ditch company's latest.
So my suggestion is, Lisa, I don't know if we've got the money. So if I'm limited to what I've got here, then what I would suggest is, and I was the one that wanted to put open space in here and stuff, but now that we have a good opportunity, and if you let that trail get disintegrated with rains and everything else, we've got the opportunity to go ahead and put it in and save the town a lot of money, that we use that 2 million to do the Timnath Reservoir Trail as far as we can do it.
I was actually going to piggyback off that. I was wondering, I know we have restricted funds that are specifically for parks and trails. I was trying to find those numbers in here and they're not coming easily to me as I'm searching. Because I agree. I think if we can piggyback, and the trail I know is the one that comes up most often with the reservoir. I feel like it would get more people there if there was a trail all the way around. I know people who drive to Windsor Lake right now, or, things like that. So.
I mean, the Windsor Lake's the ideal thing. I think that's sort of a standard bearer of what you try to shoot for with a lake and everything else going around and with people. And I'd like to see us be able to not be showed up.
Well, our lake's much bigger than their lake.
Yeah,
too,
I know. So I guess the direction, so I'm going to look at council here. I'd like to direct Lisa to try to find as much money as she can to put into this Timnath Reservoir Trail. And my suggestion is that we move the open space up. And as Lisa suggested, I think we've got trail money and parks money somewhere that we could use. Now, maybe we're already using it.
We're using 100% of all that's
Okay.
available
So
for
we
the
can't
parks
do
in the
that.
CIP.
But are we using 100% the trail?
Yes, so we have all of the restricted funds zeroed out by 2027 based on this plan.
Okay.
There is the impact fee study that could impact some of that, but right now they're all zeroed out. So whatever we get in that current year would be used, and then unrestricted on top.
So still, I'd go, we got the 2 million, maybe the 800,000 that we just talked about, that I'd like to see go into here. And the only reason I'm moving the 800 is I don't think there's any way we'll be ready to start putting in conduit and stuff like that in 2023 and have all the decisions made that we need to make and want to make. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely supportive of trying to take advantage of this potential opportunity at the reservoir. The one thing that makes me hesitant about pulling the 800,000 from the broadband is if that makes us less competitive in the grant space. I would hate to lose out on that opportunity. So if there are other ways to come up with that money, I'd suggest we look at that.
Okay. I'm totally willing to say, Lisa, we trust you. Try to grab money from anywhere and everywhere that you can to put into there. And the first suggestion is open space, move the 2 million up to the Timnath Trail.
Okay, I can rework those numbers.
And I'll just throw a comment out there. I mean, we also, directed staff to get as much of Wild Wing Park done as they could this
Yeah.
next year as well. So I mean,
And I think
certainly
they got
support
that because
the-
there's 2.5 million
Yeah.
there. So
I certainly
would-
support the open space money. I mean, this is that same type of expenditure, and but we may not get as far as we hope. is all I think we might need to acknowledge on that. So
Well,
what, if you take a look, we accomplished three things that Prost ought to like. And that is putting 2-2 into our community park and
Yeah.
finally having a fully functional, fully operating park. We've started a big shot of the Timnath Trail. And I would say I get more people asking when we're going to get that trail done than probably about anything that we're doing. So I think if we could put in 2 million, 2 miles, 3 miles, whatever, since they're doing the work, your 1 million a mile might be less than that because they've already done the grading and stuff. Maybe not, but I'm not sticking you to that, Brian, at all. And then the third thing is getting 90% done of Wild Wing with the 2.5 million there.
no, I
So
like it.
we accomplished three things. All three are at different parts of the town. And, I think we're doing a good job giving recreational activities to the town. Yes, Brian.
can I just say a couple things?
Yes, you may.
So after we talked, Mark, I looked at how much trail we have left at the reservoir. We got about 3 3/4 miles to go.
Oh, that's all. I
Yeah.
thought you said 7.
Well, what I was saying is that it's 7 miles all the way around. So when
Okay.
it's a finished loop, it would be that big.
Does that include the dam?
Yes.
So
No,
we
it-
would. Oh,
The 3.75 does not include the dams.
okay. All right.
Right. The
Go ahead.
dam,
Keep going.
the dams, I don't think we can actually put a
Yeah, we
concrete trail
can't do
on.
anything with that.
But the surface that they have on the dams is an all-weather
It's pretty
surface.
good.
You can put a stroller or a wheelchair on those. So I'm not too concerned about upgrading those. While they are putting the bench around most of those areas, I mean, we haven't seen any actual plans of the scope of what they're planning to do out there. I would say this, they have a much different approach to their capital projects than the town does, where they have like guys out there doing work and then they're like, yeah, let's keep that, let's change this, more than like a real big plan that they're just enacting then. So there's going to be a little bit of push and pull with that. There are a couple places where we will still have some work to do, specifically along Latham. They have access along Latham there, so they don't need to create the bench. But there's not a big enough bench there next to the road for the trail. So we'll have to get creative
That's
over
not
there.
more than 100 yards anyway.
It is, maybe it's 100 yards or maybe a little bit more. But we have always talked about maybe doing like a boardwalk across that shallow area to keep people off of Latham as well. So we just have not done a lot of detailed design in any of those areas yet. So
But there's a lot of things in this plan that we don't have exact details on.
Exactly,
So,
yes.
You know, we understand, I think we all understand that we're throwing spitwads, not darts.
the other thing I would mention is that when we did the last phase of the reservoir, when we were going through the approval process, we got a lot of feedback from the Wild Wing residents, and we did promise them that we would do specific outreach to them about where the trail would be and how it would interact with the development. So we'll do that first thing next year as part of this project, and then get, as we're doing survey and beginning the design process and stuff like that. But just so you know, there'll be some outreach and there might be some
I would
comments,
think that
I would
they'd
say.
be a lot happier with a improved trail than a mud flat going around their property.
The residents,
Well, you know, you still have.
yeah,
All
I
right.
personally would
Enough
want that
said.
trail in my backyard, but there's a lot of people who don't. On the Wild Wing Park, we don't have a master plan yet. We'll be bringing that back to you guys by the end of the year. Then we'll be able to do phasing and cost estimating on that. I would not anticipate that $2.5 million is going to get us 90% of the way there.
Okay.
You know, I think it's a different piece. Like, I think we'll be able to get further along than we would on a park that we're building from scratch, because we have a parking lot, we've got irrigation, we've got a bunch of those heavy infrastructure pieces already in place. But just to temper your expectations that it probably won't be 90%.
So what you ought to do is get with Lisa, because Lisa's got that's 100% because there's no other payments. There's no other costs going in there. So we probably need some costs in 24 anticipated in there.
So we have the 2.5.
Am I looking at it wrong?
Next year, and then we have nothing in 24 because we pushed the Everett down to the Timnath Ranch Park. But then we have another design phase in 25, and then another construction phase in 26. And then there's another like $2 million that we feel like is beyond that for Wild Wing Park.
Okay.
So in that, I guess I should say, if there is a philosophical change to the way we want to approach building parks, we can change the way this is structured in the CIP. But we'd always thought that what we want to do is we want to kind of give some people stuff over here, give some people stuff over here, and kind of build everything up together. As the community park was kind of around most of our population base when we started that project, but now our population base has greatly expanded in area. So we're trying to put some of these things around. But I think if we want to change that philosophy, I don't think there's a lot we need to do for next year, but I think we can approach
we got
that
to do something in
differently.
24.
Yeah, we can do something different there.
So I'm down to future 80 acre. Well, I don't know if we covered Wild Wing for everybody. Did we? Okay. Future 80 acre community park and rec center, Timnath Ranch Park is in the future. River
Actually,
Bend.
actually,
Oops,
Mark,
I'm sorry,
I just
go
have a
ahead.
quick question. So there's like a neighborhood park in South Timnath Ranch that I have always referred to as the Timnath Ranch Park. I don't know if it has an official name, but can we just double check so that if they call that something, it's not the same name for something up north? The one with the basketball court where we used to do the town events.
South of the pool.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
if we can just double check on that, just so that we don't have, I don't even know if it has a name actually, but when I hear Timnath Ranch Park, that's what I think of. So
I think that we would prefer to get a better name for that line item. It used to be called the Peanut Park, so we tried to find something that was just a little more professional.
yeah, people would know it though.
You good? Okay, I'm going to scoot all the way down to Poudre River Trail contribution, which we don't have a choice in, right? We've already committed that.
Correct. That's part of a grant
Yeah.
program with GOCO.
And then Open Space Act, we just talked through moving that up. And then Box Elder, we don't have a big choice on that either because we're committed to it, right? Okay.
I do have a question about the timing of the Poudre River Trail. And I know we've asked this before, because I want to say that agreement or that GOCO grant was in it had to have been 2-3 years ago.
Yep.
Do we know when?
Yep, we have till 2023, end of 23.
Okay, for sure?
Yep.
Or pretty sure?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We're an efficient little group, so I think we're done. I mean, I'll throw out, does anybody have any other comments you want to make on capital improvements? Okay. So how about if we let's just take a very quick break, 5 minutes, and that way we're even 5 minutes ahead of events. Yeah,
I did.
I did. Yeah. Well, actually, I think we're on events. I think Kelly's got the floor. Kelly,
Well,
take
and
it away.
Mark, if I could.
Sure.
What we have in the packet is basically what we've done in 2022. What we're really looking for, and Callie can jump in if I'm wrong here, but we want to make sure what we have as far as
Just
our.
this last page.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. We want to make sure that council is in agreement that this is our slate of events. And then we're experiencing, I kind of touched just very briefly on this earlier, but we have a larger town population. We draw from outside of the town. Inflation is real. And so we're seeing some pressures pushing those up. So we're wanting to make sure we have a good handle on the number of the events and if everyone is okay with the scale of the events, those two pieces. So whether we want to add or subtract any events and that we're okay with what we're offering during those events.
Do you want to make any comments, Kelly, or you want us to start talking?
Start talking. That was
Okay.
exactly right.
So let's do this.
Just
Let's go
a
ahead.
point of- that projected is already in the operational, right? The 790 is already included in the operational.
It is, yep.
Thank you.
So does anybody here have an event they'd like to think about adding? Luke?
Timnath Tuesdays.
What is that? Tell us more.
I don't know. But it's got a great ring to it.
It does.
Timnath Tuesdays.
Luke?
Not to add, I just wanted to comment. There's nothing to add.
Nothing to add on that.
Yeah.
Do we have it?
I have a question about what do other towns do that we don't currently do that we could potentially add? I guess I don't even know what our options are. Endless.
Endless.
Like, are we missing out on something big that other communities might be doing?
Nothing that rings a bell immediately to my head. There's always the like littler events that could be added here or there. We hit kind of, when we've looked back at our events, what we've done is we've looked to see that about every month of the year, we provide something for the town residents. And so that's kind of where we've gone based on not having any like big gap areas. If there's something more that you guys are specifically looking at, I mean, the possibilities are endless of what we could offer the town.
If I could jump in just for a quick second, what I would just make two real comments here. The first one is for the size town we are, in my opinion, we have a very robust events. Partly for Cali's sake, I feel like that's a very strong slate. So I don't know that we necessarily need to add. And then one thing that we can add, this is not by any stretch final, but we've actually just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been in conversation with Poudre River Library District. And for very small dollars, they could be coming across mobily and using our community room for story times and these smaller events. And we're talking very small numbers. And they would be putting on the exact kind of events that Callie is talking about, these smaller scale, and it wouldn't draw from her time. We've really put Callie to task with this slate here. And so I think those are ones that she would have minimal involvement, if any, and the library could be doing that. But I think it adds real value to our community. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, am I hearing it's summer reading time or summer read time type thing?
Yeah, exactly like that. Things of that nature. Yep.
So Kelly, why don't I'm going to look to council. I think that makes lots of sense. We do 2 or 3 of those summer reading things, one a month or something during June, July, August.
I think during the year would be great too for any parents who are home with, because it's typically directed at younger kids usually. So
it's still a work in progress. They were looking at 1 or 2 events a month. And these are, again, this is not 4th of July. This is not ice cream social. These are very much scaled down. But their ask was, and I don't have the figure in front of me, but I feel like it was maybe 10 or so thousand, and it would get us 20 or so events across the year.
Okay. I mean, what's everyone think? So why don't we add 10,000 to for a library program? And
I did include it in the operating budget. I just found it. So it's included elsewhere, but I can add it to the events budget.
okay, yeah, I'd put
It's
in the
accounted
events
for.
budget just so we know where it is
Yep.
and we know what we're doing on that stuff. Anything anybody'd like to delete?
I just have a question on the increase in the council chat budget.
Here, I'm going to talk about money later, so I'm just trying to stay with concepts for right now. So any event we'd like to delete. Okay. All right, Robert, now we'll talk money and what's there. So Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I just see that the projected budget for council chat is 6,500 and we're only spending 1,000 this year. So I'm just curious what the vision is there.
That specifically goes to postcards. Our best way to reach the residents in Timnath is by sending a direct mail piece. And so that's just our goal of trying to get more residents out to the council chats by adding a postcard in.
Okay, is the same true on the state of the town as most of that budget for the mailers?
On the state of the town, that one, a lot of the budget goes towards the production of it, postcards, that type of thing too.
Kim takes it all. All right, well, my two bits on, I like everything here. I don't have any change except the accountant in me is doing something totally different. And that is I'd like to increase the fireworks. I mean, that's what we're known for. That's what people get more excited about than anything. I think this budget, the fireworks was 80,000 last year and you're budgeting 87 or 88 this year. And I'd like to see us go up 20%, $20,000. I'd like to see us go to 100, maybe make it 25 minutes instead of 20 minutes, whatever I'd go with what they want. But I think we try to make it a bigger production there from a pyrotechnics standpoint. I think I'm getting nods. So if you could increase that to 100.
Perfect. I will do that for the next council meeting.
Okay. Any other?
The only one I've got, Mark, is the town cleanup day. I know we run out of dumpsters and we generally run out on that. Is there a way we can look at that? And is that number account for more? Because I feel like every year the lines are longer and there's more stuff filled up. So I was hoping to walk through that number with you.
Yeah, so hopefully this should cover the cost of increasing enough dumpsters. This budget right here keeps the same offerings. So the same recycling that we have and everything, just increasing the number of dumpsters that we have, the volume that we're able to take in.
If I look at it right, Luke, I think it's a 40% increase from last year. Is that right, Callie?
I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Well, I'm taking the 30,000 that I think is what's been spent last year, and we're going to 44, so 14,000 over 30.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's enough. Like every
Yeah.
year people are like, it closed and I can't bring my stuff. And so I just want to make sure it's enough. So.
I don't know where all the stuff comes from, but this should.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have something, Brett?
Can I go one more?
Oh,
Mark?
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Luke. Go.
Our school engagement activities, I see we're going to 5,000 to 15,000, and that's going to include the middle high now. Is that the big part of that increase?
Yeah, so that increase includes both Timnath Elementary, Bethke, and the new Timnath Middle High. We don't have anything specific with them. It's just a plan as they go, like we do, bike to school day with Bethke, the Halloween parade and all at Timnath Elementary, in hopes that we can be engaged with the Timnath Middle High.
Thank you.
Brett?
56,000 for other events, miscellaneous. Can you just give me some idea of what kinds of the items would fall in that?
So that's going to be like grand openings, like our new police center grand opening. Any of our other little things that we have that come up. Is best, let me pull them all up.
It also includes community engagement photography. So like at some of the smaller events, like we just had Pop with a Cop, some photography there, so we could use it for futures. Every other year, we have the council and mayoral forums now, which we didn't have those accounted for in the current year. And I think that's all I have in my notes, Kelly.
Yeah, any new groundbreakings possibly, so like any of the parks, any of that type of stuff, it's gonna give us budgets for that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question about the cleanup day as well. I know we've talked about it in the past, but can we look into doing the hazardous waste collection? Or is it just cost prohibitive? Or I know we've kind of thrown around that idea of offering that.
It hasn't been a service that's available.
Okay.
If it becomes available, yes, it's a very tricky fine line that we have to send everybody to the Larimer County dump.
Okay.
For.
Could we work with Larimer County to just do that as like a collection point that one day? And then
I can try, definitely.
okay. And then I would just encourage us to look at all the communities in the area and their garage sale days. I know that comes up often where we have the cleanup day the weekend before somebody, and I know there's many communities and it's hard to coordinate all of those, but maybe just kind of take a look at what some of those are. And then another comment about the council chats. I wonder if we could look into potentially partnering with some of the businesses in town and perhaps hosting a council chat at, the Feed and Grain, the Timnath Beer Works, Backyard Bird, one of those where maybe we could, support them in some way as well.
Definitely.
Okay. Anything else? Kelly, I got to say, it's awesome working with you. You always make it so easy and stuff. So thanks for all your hard work always.
Thank you. I love these events.
Okay, I think we're good with that. Aaron, that leaves us 5:30, which is your wrap-up comments and questions. And I think I've looked around and asked all along the way if anybody has questions. I haven't seen any. So really, you just wrap it up whatever way you want.
Sorry, I just needed a little memory jog. I think the last piece, well, first of all, we wanted to say thank you again for coming in at 3:00. I know you all have busy schedules. Just a quick reminder, the draft budget will be out in October for the public and for their input. November will be that first reading and then final adoption in December. The only piece we have left was we just would appreciate a very quick discussion on bringing back that PD schedule, I'm calling it. Would you want a very quick work session? Would you just want it as an item on a regular agenda? I'm open to the input of the council and how you'd prefer to see that.
It'll be a discussion item. I don't care how the logistics go. If anybody's got a preference or anything, we don't have a preference. So you choose whatever. Should you put it in the council? Let's put it one side or the other of the agenda, no matter what. Because I think it's going to be a 10 or 15-minute discussion, quite frankly.
Okay.
Especially if it's already in the packet that we're given. So
okay.
I don't see this being a long discussion item. I think it's mainly give us the info, let's discuss it just a little bit between ourselves and go on from there. Because I think we've gotten the info along the way with this, other than manpower.
Okay.
So,
no, that's perfect. It sounds like it'll fit into just a regular agenda as a discussion piece. That's all we really needed. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
With that, that's really all I had. Just my appreciation.
Okay, great. All right, good job, everybody. Let's see. Do you need to close the work session?
Yeah,
Melissa?
you'll want to have a vote to adjourn.
Okay, so do I have a vote to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn the work session.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.